welcome back. Excited to be with you guys yet again. Another topic, another week. Yep. We're going to start off, as we always do, with a review from one of you. Yet again, thank you to those of you guys who are leaving comments and messages on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube. It means a lot to us, honestly. So we're very appreciative of that. This one is from Spotify, and it is on a parenting episode. And it says, navigating parenting in all seasons. I feel like maybe we should go back and listen to some of our own episodes on some of these.
Right.
It says, so powerful, trusting God with our lives, our spouse, and our kids is so hard. So grateful for the reminder to give them to God and to be intentional parents. Also, thank you for that reminder right back to us. Yeah. So it's always amazing how some of those things can come back and in different seasons mean even more to us as well. So it's kind of cool how that works. But we are wanting to make sure that we cover topics that we feel are relevant to every marriage. And specifically, one of the things that is typically a really big issue in a marriage is communication. We've done a few episodes on various aspects of communication, but we really wanted to talk specifically today about a couple of tendencies that people have in their communication and how they can have an impact on not only the direction of your marriage, but just in general, your understanding of one another, your, ability to have good communication.
Yeah. Well, I think so. It's funny. Communication. Well, because
that's funny.
Well, because when you pitched this episode to me, I looked at it as an anger episode.
Really?
Not as a communication episode.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, the title you sent me.
Right, but to me, all of this is...
Yeah, I mean, everything...
Communication.
Everything boils down to communication, I feel like. Like, if you really think about it, like, let's get, like, deep.
Theological.
Right? Well, not theological, but just... is everything does boil down to communication, right?
Yeah.
But I just immediately saw this, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is how you deal with anger. I mean, I just thought, I understand it's not, but that was
your understanding. Yeah. This is why the importance of communication is there, because you can have the same conversation and come out with different understanding.
Yeah. It's like you speak to me in parables.
No.
I feel like the disciples well, what does this mean, Lord? And he's like, you'll know in a bit. It's really for them. They don't understand.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. There's probably husbands who are like, yes, I also feel like my wife talks to me in parables. Yeah. Why?
I'm like, just give me the
in
bluff. My
defense, ladies, in case you want to know what I literally send him text messages. So, I feel like...
Silent or explosive? ? How shutting down and raging both hurt your marriage. I love the title. But I'm saying is what I took from that was, how do you deal with anger in your marriage? Do you shut down or do you rage? And then the communication that follows along. So I just thought,
well, I think it can be both, but just particularly in communication, I think these are both kind of two sides of the coin that happen in the middle of, especially like intense conversations. Because the reality is, marriage, you're going to have some intense conversations and you're going to have conversations that you guys end up on both sides of the discussion or the argument or the issue, right? Like where you feel like I am right, and your spouse feels like I am right.
Yeah. And
in those places, like you all have a decision that you can make. I will argue, if you want to argue about something,
no,
that
I'm just playing with you. just was a good spot to say that. No, what?
No, I do feel like this actually came up in our marriage group within the last. You're still laughing at your own joke? Okay. I will argue that even if you can't come to a place of understanding in those intense places, you still have to own the responsibility of stepping towards your spouse, of closing a gap. And I think this is where most people get in those like really stuck positions of like, I am right. And the other person is like, well, I am right. And they both stay in those separate corners with this resolve that they're right.
And is it really a hill to die on?
Well, and I agree with you. There are definitely people that would say that it is their hill to die on, right? It's just,
I feel there's just so much more in that. And I think we get into that, but I just feel that there's so much more in that.
In that.
Well, it's just not.
Are you speaking to me in parables now?
Yes.
So I think what I want whoever is listening today to today's episode, that you will keep the perspective of not just evaluating like, oh, that is exactly how my spouse responds, and it is so toxic, but that you pay attention to your own communication tendencies, because you can only do something about your own ultimately, right? Like your spouse has to work on their side of it. And it is difficult when only one person is, but that doesn't negate the fact that you have to do that. And I yet again, I think you have to move towards closing the gap when it comes to any kind of disconnect in the relationship, any kind of disconnect in communication, physically, spiritually, mentally. Like we have to own it.
How do you think I handle this?
When we're having like an intense discussion?
Yeah.
I mean, I know we've learned, like we actually had somebody ask me a question recently. They said, do you feel like every couple, because we were having a discussion about communication, like, do you feel like every couple has to have basically kind of these explosive conversations? And this was a question posed to the group because most of the group was kind of discussing how this played out in their marriage, very, I would say pretty volatile type of conversations that are happening. Yeah. Not physically, but
no, it's funny because it goes with like the whole, I mean, we live, I'm half Hispanic. We live, in a border town, right? And so the predominantly Hispanic Mexican area. And so it just kind of makes me smile because it is like more of that passion, the Latina passion, and just like, whoa,
But so anyway. In this particular, they were asking like, well, does everyone have to have that? And I could see from the heart of what this gentleman was asking was like, because we're not having that. And is that bad? Like, is that bad that we're not like,
and I know which couple you're talking about, and their demeanor, the way they are, they're not, you could tell they're not like,
right. Not that they never disagree, but
also not that they're not passionate, but they're not argumentative. Like they're not going to have these blow ups.
Right. And so, I mean, I just spoke up and was like telling them like you and I honestly, the last time I remember us having any kind of what I would consider like an explosive type conversation was in the reconciliation process. So probably about 11 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's not saying that that's the way it has to be for you. But I think what that taught us was we kind of learned to evaluate when something was worth having that kind of conversation about.
Yeah. I mean, and just both our demeanors too. Like I very rarely raise my voice.
Yeah.
I very rarely get, excited in that sense. It's just, I don't see a reason behind it.
Well, and I think because of our experiences, because of what we've gone through in our marriage, we've been able to recognize like the very important things and the things that are not so important. Yeah. And it's helped us to weigh that out on the scales of, okay, we can have very real and intentional conversations about intense things, even things that we disagree on, but we can do it honorably with kindness. And I would say that I feel like everyone should move in that direction, right? That even in disagreeing with someone, you can move towards a place of having that kind of disagreement, if you will, in a place of kindness. But all of that to say, so if you're not a couple that rages at each other, That's okay as long as you're willing to have conversations that are difficult. You have to communicate still, right? Like you can't just not communicate and just shut down both of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we want to really focus on is this aspect of shutting down or going to raging.
It's both the extremes, right?
Both the extremes, both destructive, really. So the shutting down, I would say if I have a tendency in any kind of communication pattern, this is probably where I would lean a little bit. Not that I don't want to talk about it, but I would definitely go to a period of processing more quietly before I would have like some serious conversations. I think I lean towards this definitely more towards than the raging, but in all the other ones in between, I think I lean towards withdrawing a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, well, you never answered my question, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's what
was your question?
You don't remember?
I literally am blanking out right now.
I was like, how do you feel I react?
Oh, how do you feel you'll react?
Because I don't know. Like I'm looking at these, thinking, okay, I guess I do shut down, but I don't really shut down towards you. It's mainly like others.
Yes.
I mean, it really is, right? Like
I feel like you're much better at being like, okay, well, this happened in that outside of our inner circle family. If this happened, a certain thing, like, oh, well, cut it off. Like, it's fine, and you'll be able to like move on from that. Like, so to me, that's more of shutting people out. But with us, you might go through similarly to me a little period of shutting down a little bit and processing. I think probably we actually kind of both land there. And I think it's more of a learned behavior than a natural.
No, it for sure is. Because I think if I look back, even prior to marriage, my emotion or my go-to would probably just be more of silent or shutting down, where I was like, I'm not even going to deal with this. Like, I don't want to. I'm not argumentative.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to argue. I just don't.
We lean both more towards.
Yeah. That doesn't mean I won't say something. It just is like, I don't want to argue.
So, okay. So there's 4 communication styles in general that are considered to be communication styles. And I believe, did an episode entirely on these.
Yeah, we did.
So I'm just going to go over it really quickly. There's the passive, passive aggressive, aggressive, and assertive.
Yeah.
So assertive is obviously the goal, where you can be appropriately honest and direct, empathetic to emotions and all involved, and then they all go.
Yeah. No, that's true. Great. We did an episode on that, but that's why I feel like this is more of like, this isn't just communication. This is, you're mad.
Yeah.
That's what this is. Like, this episode is, you're mad at something. All right.
Title.
How do you?
You're mad.
Well, how do you communicate through that? Like, how do you get over or communicate through your?
I'll get on board with this.
Indifference, right? Or your argument, or whatever the subject is.
Yeah.
Like, that's what this is. That's really what this is. Like, you have options. Like,
you're already upset, like whether it's by communication or something else.
Yeah, let's talk about whatever. No, this is, how, because those 4 communication styles are very true, and they hold true.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about just normal communication. Like, that's why I look at this and I mean, silent or explosive. Like, okay, you're already mad. How are you choosing to work through it? Yeah. With your spouse, right? And I love Proverbs 15:1, where it says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. That holds so true. It really does. Like, I'm trying to think of great examples between us, and right now I can only think of examples
that scares you so much.
Between my daughter and I.
Oh, okay.
Right? So, because we both,
you guys
for
both
a season
respond.
there, it was like, ugh, and I remember I would walk away sometimes, and I would replay in my mind, like how everyone does. If I would have just said this, right? But no, my replay was, man, what would have the outcome been if I just answered this way, or if I just spoke like this? Like, what would the outcome have been?
Right.
Versus both of us are mad now. I'm going to go apologize, you know, like we're going to make up, but both of us right now are just mad. And we walked away. We didn't intentionally hurt each other. We may not have even hurt each other like lasting hurt, you know, but it was a moment of like
severing.
Yeah. And we had to come back together.
Yeah.
Where what could I have done? What could I have done different? How could have I responded? How could have I been more like that gentle answer? You know?
Yeah.
Versus what I decided to do, you know? And that's, you know.
When your emotions are high and that.
Yeah.
That
so,
instinct.
I mean, in here, what you had sent me, you know, it says shutting down leads to emotional distance, avoidance, unresolved issues, because you might not ever come back to that. And then it's just something lingering over your own head, because your spouse is probably like, I'm moving on. You know, like there's one, and this isn't just male, female. There's like one spouse that'll always be like, this is easy to move on from. We can just forget it and go. And the other one's like pretending they forgot it.
Taking the scoreboard out
and you know,
you're
-1. And then raging, which is, I just think it's kind of, I mean, I feel like I could get on the shutting down, you know, team versus I can the raging team, because I feel like it's throwing a fit. But they're both throwing a fit. But raging causes hurtful words, fear, and lack of trust. So both of these really create a wall that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
They both don't resolve what's going on. So there's no resolution, there's no healing, there's nothing, because you're literally throwing a wall up.
Yeah, because both are these reactions that inevitably mean that you are behaving and or saying things that really don't reflect the heart of who you are or the heart of the relationship. And I think that's the thing that is so difficult. And when you get into those red zones, right, where it's like all you do is see red and you're out to like win whatever war that you're facing in that moment, it's like you end up losing, and the people that you love end up losing. It's interesting that you brought up because the parenting side of it, because I think probably when I'm like thinking of our relationship, I also don't think of very much these kind of reactions.
Yes. And let me like say this to everyone out there.
Yes. Yeah. So I know what you're going to say.
We don't have a perfect marriage.
No.
By any means. We really don't. We work hard at our marriage. And because of experiences and everything we've gone through, when we disagree on something, it is something we talk about. There's not this anger. I have a hard time understanding that between you and I, but then when I bring it to the parenting thing, I'm like, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? You know,
there's nothing that will show and reflect your own selfishness like parenting will, unequivocally. But when you brought that up, all of a sudden I was like, oh yes, now I remember moments of seeing red or reacting or just responding in ways that I was regretful of, and having to go and do the apology and having to just feel that disappointment in myself. You know, that I reacted instantaneously in a situation that clearly did not warrant such a reaction. And yeah, so putting it to that element of parenting in whichever way that you need to look at it, whether it's your marriage or parenting or work relationships or whatever it is, like there's no doubt we have this in us, you know, like, and it's not pretty anytime it shows up.
You know, I was looking at this and I'm thinking like, which one could I, you know, maybe which one's, what's the worst of the two evils, or what's the lesser of the two evils, kind of looking at this topic, you know, shutting down versus raging. Like what is, you know, if my spouse is going to have one, or if I'm going to do one, you know, what's the lesser of the wrongs kind of deal. And the more I'm sitting on this while we're talking about it, they're really equal.
Yeah, I agree with you.
They really are equal. But I think that I say they're equal. they can hurt you in so many different ways. But I'll say this because of working with marriages and here, like even, you know, in marriage groups and different places we've been where we've heard discussions based on name a topic, right? You know, we've all talked about it and gone over it, is there's like this very real in marriages. And I think it may be, you know, anyway, it's a rejection side of it.
Yeah.
Right. And feeling rejected versus, you know, maybe in various ways, right? It could be you've been dismissed.
It's like find your insecurity, and that's where you're going to feel rejected.
Yeah, you've been dismissed in your opinion. Maybe you feel like you've been rejected, you know, even like on the physical level, right? Like, you know, you feel like we should be having sex, but we're not. Or I wish she would just hold my hand or rub my back or vice versa, you know, and he's not, they're not. And, you know, these like micro rejections. Just
talk and they won't talk to me.
Yeah, these micro rejections over and over again. And when you're shutting down with that silent treatment, you're isolating yourself and you're causing rejection.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like, I don't want to deal with this, but that's not what your spouse is really seeing. Your spouse is seeing and hearing, I don't want to deal with you. It's not even the topic or the you know, whatever it is. It's not that. Your spouse is literally saying like, I don't want to deal with you. Like we're not talking about this. We're not like I'm. Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And I think when you just think of like shutting down or like explosive anger, it sounds prettier to say that you would withdraw or shut down than it does to go to anger. But I think what we've seen over time is the destructive side of shutting down. I find it interesting that I feel like for some people, because their natural instinct is to go to explosive anger, because they don't want to do that, they just go to shut down.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting that you can kind of almost see like the tendencies sway from one extreme to the other. But the shutting down side of things, man, the messages you send with shutting down to your spouse, along with explosive anger. But I just specifically I want to talk about shutting down because it's like you basically invalidate your spouse.
Yeah.
You are going to a performance-based marriage as well in a lot of ways where it's like, well, you upset me and now here's your punishment.
Yeah.
And it's like, you see, man, where one spouse is just like, I can't bring up anything difficult. I can't say that this is an issue. I can't have that, you know, element of growth because as soon as I say something, I'm basically treated like I don't exist for 3 days, 5 days. Like, that's torture.
Yeah.
That is literally torture, just to feel like, wow, I'm so insignificant. My opinion is so devalued. My voice is so unheard. You know, like you said, rejection. But
it turns the other spouse into a passive spouse.
Right.
And I don't think anyone goes into a marriage or has a marriage and says, I really wish my spouse was just passive. Like, I don't feel that that's a thing. You know, I know like you've coached a lot of women one-on-one. You're in your women group and all that, all those things.
What's the waving of a hand?
But with that, like you've said, like, you know, women crave to be led by their spouse, to have a husband that is willing to like step up to do those things. You can't be passive to do that. And I haven't talked to men about this, but like we want the same thing from women, right? Like I want a strong woman. I don't want someone that's just passive, right? I want someone that'll stand up for herself, that will be in it, that is willing to do the things, you know, all those things. Like I don't want just some passive little, you know, wife that just sits over there.
Well, I do think that usually if there's someone who's really manipulative and toxic, they look for those kind of things. But other than that, healthy marriage,
asterisk everything.
Yes.
We're talking about healthy marriages,
yes.
like, and healthy men, right?
Yes.
Like I'm not getting
and
into
I got to
like
give the caveat.
Yeah, I know. And it's for someone so they don't comment like, well, what about this? He's super manipulative. Well, yeah, obviously.
There are toxic men and women out there, unequivocally.
Yes. But the shutting down, I mean, it leads to that passiveness because you just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to agree with everything this person says because last time I didn't get to talk to them for 3 days, which I don't get that. First of all, like I have a hard time understanding that. I really do. And it's not that we have this perfect marriage. I just have a hard time understanding. Like, don't you guys sleep in the same bed?
I get quiet, like in a car ride, and you're asking me what's going on.
And then you lie to me as we go into church.
True.
Walking into church. Are you okay?
Not true.
Yep, everything's fine. Boop, boop, boop. Right into church, worship, let's go. And then later it's like, everything's not fine. And I'm like, okay, I knew it.
You guys are going to have to go listen to several episodes back for that story, just so you know. No, but I mean, but that's the encouragement of communication, right? Is that we keep inquiring, we keep asking, because especially if you have a tendency to go towards shutdown, you do want to give opportunity for someone to say, okay, like, that's not healthy, right? Like, we don't want to go to shutdown. But the silent treatment thing, we've experienced that in some other relationships, just where you've done something that is clearly like not liked in some way, shape, or form, and you kind of just get the silent treatment. And that's not even in my own like immediate family, and it's torture.
Oh, like friends. I was like, other relationships? What are you talking about? Oh yeah, those things make me laugh.
Yes, this is the difference between
They do make me laugh because I'm like, okay, fine. You don't want to talk to me, don't talk to me. Like, I don't like
this is where the difference is in you saying like, okay, you're easier to cut off, and I will like wrestle with those things. I want peace.
Yes, but at the same time, the thing is, outside of a marriage, I can do that. Mm-hmm. Inside of my four wall, like, I don't want to do that.
No.
Like, we have to figure this out. I don't want our marriage to suffer because of some disagreement. So we need to figure this out.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
We need to sit down. Now, not opposite silent treatment, but the other side of this, the compromise, I guess, would be you can tell your spouse, I can't really do this right now. Like, I can't, this isn't a good time to talk about this.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to process it. I still can't believe, whatever happened or whatever's going on. Like, I'm still I'm still processing it. So I want to, like, let's talk about it, but I don't want to talk about it right now.
Button.
I'd rather not talk about it right now. So then, but finishing that sentence is, let's look and see when we can, when would be a good time to talk about this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't keep it on forever pause.
Versus you put it on, you could put it on your calendar. You can, say, oh, let's tomorrow when I get home, like, let's do this, whatever it is.
You have to have the conversation.
But there has to be like follow on, right? And so you're not doing the silent treatment. What you're doing is you're processing, and really it's a very healthy way to do it, especially if you're quick to act in some way and then you later regret it.
Yeah.
And so even if it's raging or arguing, whatever, the raging thing sounds weird to me, but explosive anger or shutting down, whichever it is, but you're giving yourself time to like sit in it. Like, let me figure this out. Am I looking at it? When you do that, what you should be doing is looking at it from all angles, right? Not getting set on just your side and your angle on the whole thing. I don't know how many times this has happened to me at work where it's like something comes up and, the instant is like, you're mad.
Can't believe that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? Blah, blah, blah. And you just get mad. And then it's like, man, I have to take a step back. And I just need to look at this from all the different angles. Because, like, okay, for us, right? Say there's something you did or something that I perceived you did or whatever, or you have this strong opinion about this, you disagree about something, right? I don't know if this is a great example, but you're in that headspace, and I'm not. And I can't believe that you can even think like this. Like, I mean, really, you know, are you kidding me? How can you even think like that? I don't understand. Do I even know you kind of deal, right? And because of that little statement, you really have to ask yourself that, like, yes, you do know them. So what you need to do is take a step back and try to figure out, like, why? What am I not seeing? I know them. Yeah. Like, I don't understand why. Well, look at it from this angle. Look at it from that angle.
Like we always say, you got to assume the best, not the worst about your spouse. And give them that grace.
So, I mean, the shutting down thing, I think both of these, but mainly the shutting down, it's putting a pause. Don't get quiet. Just put a pause button, you know. Press play again. Hopefully that week. Like, it's not something that needs to be extended out past that.
Right, because you're also putting someone else in a torturous zone.
One spouse can't move on.
Yeah.
Right? So they might be able to act like everything's okay, but they're not really okay. And so you need to, and that's why I even suggest, like, okay, this is something we need to sit down and talk about. I don't want to talk about right now. I can't, whatever reason. And the other spouse needs to respect that. But then right then and there, it's like, okay.
Schedule it.
Yeah. Let's schedule it. When are we going to talk about this?
Yeah.
And then you do it.
Yeah, follow through really matters here too. Really matters. I think something to ask yourself always with any kind of, you know, initial reaction to a highly emotional situation is whether you are taking the emotional temperature in your home or in your space and taking it captive.
Yeah.
And I think with either one of these, like with the shutting down or even that anger, that explosive anger, like you are taking captive the emotional energy in that home. Everyone at that point is trying to figure out whether or not you're okay to approach, whether or not they can have a conversation with you, whether they can joke with you. Like you are taking captive the emotional energy in your home. And I think it's really, even if you don't go to these two extremes, that's a really easy thing to do. And it's important, you know, last week we talked about assessment, is assessing, you know, whether or not you specifically are the person that is like deciding that in your home and in your relationships, and seeing what is it that I'm doing, right? Are people walking around on eggshells with you?
That one, that's what I'm going to talk about next, is the explosive anger. I think that's when people walk around on eggshells, because the shutting down, I think you're not doing the opposite, but really what you're doing is you're just sitting back. Like, you're just like, I'm not really going to cause any waves or any problems. I'm just going to sit back and let her or him be however they want, so they don't, you know, shut me out.
Yeah, the more the passiveness. I think like either way, you are taking captive that.
I didn't say you weren't. Yeah, for sure you are. Yeah. But I think with explosive anger, which this one I have a harder time wrapping my head around, because even when I talked about the parenting side of it, where I used to get so heated, there was never any like screaming or yelling, and there was never this, I'm going to hurt you with what I'm about to say.
Yeah. I feel like there were times I've definitely yelled. I've definitely regretted some of the things I've said, for sure. Not in like
but it's not a demeaning, degrading way.
Never with that intention, for sure. It's just one of those things, like if you had given yourself, right, the little timeout or whatever, you would have approached it or said, or, you know, did a different tone or said it in a different way, right? Because, I mean, I had a conversation just recently with our daughter about this breaking of spirit that can happen that you see with your kids, and especially like our middle child, when he was little, it was like, he's so persistent. He still is to this day. Probably one of the most persistent individuals ever. And in so many ways, it's beautiful to see as he's growing into adulthood, right? At 18, seeing what he's pursuing after and persistent on is just amazing. It's amazing to see. But I know there were times when he was little that I crushed his spirit.
Yeah. And,
you know, I had that conversation with my daughter, like times where I know, like I just kind of had my little, anger gauge a little higher with him. And so, yeah, I specifically kind of remember some of those situations and regret them. I think until you mentioned the parenting thing, I didn't really get the explosive anger, but it's amazing how that does bring things out in you.
No, it does. I just, we've coached couples that have this issue with almost every topic that comes up, and it's that the reaction, it's not. So I think the biggest thing to realize is really, this isn't about like, you might get the sense that you feel like you've let your emotions out, right? Emotional release. Like, I need to get this out. But in reality, you're just shutting the whole thing down, really. You're screaming and yelling, or, I mean, really you are. If it's explosive anger, like everything's getting loud, right? It's getting loud. And you can't tell me, I'd love to line up couples and individually ask them to have an issue with this and say, have you ever walked away not feeling regret? Like, have you ever turned around after the screaming and yelling was done and felt like, yep, that was great.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Perfect. I'm going to walk away now. You might initially feel that you did something good, but I guarantee you, as soon as you leave that room, regret immediately floods over you.
And this is the interesting thing, I think, of explosive anger. So you say things, and most often you're saying things, anything that you can just grab hold of, right? And a lot of times when it's in the most intimate relationships of our life, we know what hurts someone.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we know, like, this is an insecurity that you have, or this is something you did in the past, or whatever it is. And that's pulled up in those anger moments, right? We use them as weapons. To me, that's what I think of as explosive anger, is like, you got this tool belt and it's full of like little knives, and you're like,
you imagine,
just boom, boom, boom at everybody.
Just as you're saying that, you imagine if, like, your relationship with Christ, if he got mad at you,
and did the same thing. Yeah. Like, here's all of the things you've done. And you're like, let me tell you.
Like, how can you can't even live like that.
For sure. Cause you can never measure up to it.
And do you want someone doing that to you?
Right. No, right? No one.
So like, and I've told you this, and I'll always say this, like, marriage is this beautiful, scary, place to be, right? A good marriage.
Yeah.
Of course, bad marriages are scary to be in, but like this good marriage, the reason I say that it's beautifully messy, beautifully scary, however I put it, is that nobody else in this world can hurt me like you can. Nobody else.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if someone else knows all the insecurities I deal with and says something about them or pokes at or whatever. It really doesn't matter. Yeah, ultimately, I can get over that, but it's us, and you can hurt me more than anyone else can. And so, if you're listening and you're thinking about that with your spouse, like, that statement should be true. Like, the only person in this world that can cut you like that deep should be your spouse.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because that means you're not holding anything back.
Yeah, because you want that level of intimacy.
It is a level of intimacy that you shouldn't have with anyone else. So no one else should have the ability to do that. And if you don't have that level of intimacy, you need to work on it, because this is a place that I feel that all marriages should be.
Yeah.
Right? Any marriage you pull aside and talk to, they should be able to say, oh yeah, he or she could hurt me more than anyone else on earth. It doesn't matter if other people know me, have grown up with me, know my insecurities, know what bothers me, know the things. They're not going to hurt me as much as you can. And that's the way I feel that it should be. Right? I don't think it should be another way. And so, saying that, do you really want to just obliterate your spouse?
Yeah, well, here's the funny thing about it. What I was mentioning is that, so then you get an explosive anger, right? You use those things, the little knives you're throwing at people. What happens is that person that you're throwing all those things at in those moments interprets that to be what you really think.
Absolutely.
That's what you really like. And this is so true. Like, if you ever think of some kind of discussion where someone says something to you and in the middle of something, and even when we had our moments where it was like so intense, like there were things that you would say in that moment, or things that I would say to you. And it was like, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's the truth of this. Even though it wasn't the reality. But when you're saying those things in explosive anger, instead of you allowing other people to have that benefit of the doubt with you that says like, no, they're for me, they love me, it's like, and that's what you really think of me. And so you continue to not only in explosive anger sever the relationship, but you also give the other person a distorted version of the truth. And so it continues to create a chasm, right? Like it already puts you at a disadvantage. Even when you are doing well, that person still thinks that, but this is what they really think of me. This is what they really think of this topic. But half the time, someone who's responding in explosive anger doesn't even remember what they've said.
No.
Like they're just, like I said, they have that whole tool belt of knives and they're just, boom, I'm just throwing them. So it's not like they're sitting there going, oh, hold on a second, let me evaluate this for the truth of the statement. It's just like, what will hurt you the most?
Yeah.
Boom, that's what I'm going to do. And so it has a ripple effect too, just like the 3 to 5 days of silent treatment, right? It has that same ripple effect on a spouse. So does that raging side of things that just says, well, I know what you really think. I know what you really think of this. And yeah, that kind of stuff, both of them just create this.
It's such chasm. A hard, like you want your marriage to thrive. But this is the issue that you have. It's never going to get better. Right. If you have to tackle this issue.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't ignore it.
Your marriage can be better. But if you don't tackle this explosive anger, like you're literally, I mean, it's the equivalent of, right? Not the equivalent of, to me, I can kind of see it as you're just beating each other up.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, I'm just going to smack you around because I'm so mad right now and you deserve this. And then I expect us
be okay after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be okay.
And someone else is just going like,
no,
what?
Absolutely
I'm just
not.
like bleeding out over here from the 15 knives you just threw at me. And like, now I'm supposed to just be like, okay, but I guess we're fine now because you got out that emotional, outburst.
I really feel, and maybe it's in your notes that you sent me, but I really feel that there's such, like there are anger issues, right? Like we have a good friends of ours and he's overcome a lot of anger issues. Mm-hmm. There are anger issues, but at the same time, I feel like there's so much on the person that does this. There's so much insecurity in there. There's so much past hurt in there. There's so many things that person is dealing with.
Yeah.
And they're just, pushing it on someone else, right? Inferiority. Like there's so many other things that are bringing this up because really like sit here and think about this, right? This explosive anger side of things. Yes, there are anger issues, but really think about this. And I look at the outside world, right? Non-believers, right? And you see, YouTube videos and you hear of people always like blowing up over nothing, throwing tantrums over nothing. Mm-hmm. Really, it's really nothing. Nothing they can control, right? Nothing, like it's just this, it's ridiculous. You see grown men and women acting like children and not a child that I would whoop that butt, right? Like not a child that should be acting like that, right? But also that child's learning how to figure out emotions, right? You're a grown adult. Like, what are you doing, right?
Well, that's what I wanted to make sure that I mentioned. Well, go ahead, finish your thing.
I don't know now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is a lot of times those grown adults are children who just saw that in their parents. And you can't use that as an excuse, right? Like a lot of times people who have explosive anger grew up with explosive anger. And that is so unfortunate. But you have to think about even the impact that had on you, or you think that that's normal, right? This is how we have arguments. This is how we have discussions. And it's like, well, no, you have to recognize the knives you're throwing and the impact it has. And even if that was how you grew up, and even if it was in such a toxic environment, at some level, we have to say that's not okay. That's not the acceptable way that I can communicate hurt or feelings of, insecurities or inadequacies. I can't do that.
I feel that's just an excuse to not work on yourself. You're
Yeah.
just excusing your own behavior. Really, like, I understand the way you grow up has a
Huge impact on you.
huge impact on you, what you've experienced, did your mama hug you enough, whatever it was. Like, I get it. I understand the concept of it. What I don't get is why are you hanging your hat on that? Like, stop hanging your hat on that. Do you like that? Mm-hmm. Did you like it? Then stop doing it. Stop. Well, that's all I know. Well, know something else. Like, figure something else out, man. And that's why, even a good friend of mine was telling me that he was counseling this person, right? This guy, and it was so many sessions deep, right? Legitimate counseling, so many sessions deep. And finally he met him again, and the guy's bringing up his when I was 5 years old, and he goes, stop. Like, what are you doing, man? How old are you now? And he's like, oh, I'm 40 or whatever. Like, all right. Yeah, it was when you were 5. We're done with this. Like, you're a grown adult. Like, you don't want that. You see where it came from. Great. Now, stop. Yeah. I was 5 and this happened. Stop.
Yeah, you can see it and don't use it as an excuse for your behavior now.
Yeah, stop. My dad used to scream and yell all the time, so that's what I do. Well, stop it. That's really what it comes down to,
that whole
right?
Like skit on counseling where the guy just the whole time is like, stop it.
Yeah,
stop it.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, but it's so true, because it's like, do you want something different? Like, I've never had a couple in front of us that said, like, we love to scream and yell at each other. Yeah. It's amazing. No, they all want something. They don't want any of it. Well, then stop doing it. Like, stop, lay down your own pride, lay down all those things. And that's kind of what I was getting at with these people that throw fits and all that, is that they're so entitled. They act like the world should revolve around them. They're so prideful. They have huge insecurities. Like, when someone starts screaming and yelling at you, I'm like, really? Like, what's your problem? Well, you've made me so mad. No, really, what's your problem, man? Like, we can't talk about this like adults.
I've only ever really been yelled at once by a man.
And then I grabbed the phone and I told him to come over. Yeah. And he didn't know what to do. And he started raging more. And I was like, I'm not yelling at you. I'm telling you, don't talk to my wife like that. And you can come over the house.
And that was that.
And it was over after that. But I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
Even in that sense. So I have, putting on courses and different things like that, you induce stress. You want to induce stress. And so, yes, like, I've yelled at grown men, right? But not out of anger.
Yeah.
And I've never understood that. And I've talked about this with other men in our world and other leaders, where it's like, I don't understand when a leader's frustrated. But I'm a grown man, you're a grown man. We can talk about this, right? I'm a grown adult, you're a grown adult. Our voices do not need to get higher than this.
Yep.
We can disagree, we can be passionate, we can be quote unquote right. Like, we can be there. I understand that side of it. But for me to raise my voice above this, there's no excuse. There really isn't. And I don't understand it. Like, I can't imagine yelling at you. I can't imagine it. I look at you, you might laugh at this, but I look at you as this, you're not like this. I look at you as this fragile, precious, not thing, but you have this fragileness about you. You have this preciousness about you. Like, I look at you like that. Like, how can I raise my voice and get like this with you? Like, it doesn't matter, how frustrated you make me. Like, we can talk about it. Like, let's get through this. We don't agree. This is an argument. I've made you mad. You've made me, or whatever it is. Like, okay, we're going to get through this. But for me to raise my voice above what it is now, there's no excuse. I really don't feel there's an excuse to do that at all. I don't understand it. You can talk about this as an adult. You can be passionate about it. Yeah. You can show emotion. Those are all God-given things.
Yeah.
Like, do that. But to yell, to degrade, Those aren't. So I think you have it in here. Yeah. James 1:20, right? Human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires.
Yeah.
Human anger, right? We get angry. I get angry. Like, I know I'm going to get angry this week. Not at you. Like, I know just something
Other
this
drivers
week,
are definitely going to do
something this week is going to make me angry, right? And there's this human aspect of that. What am I going to do with that? You know, am I going to sit on it and I'm going to let it just fume and ruin my day? Am I going to start yelling and screaming because something made me mad? Or am I just going to handle it like an adult?
Yeah. Well, it's like that, you know, bringing up the road rage. Like, you can be upset that a driver cut you off, or upset that, you know, you can be upset about it. Yeah. But then you see the people that are taking it to the next extreme, right? They feel the necessity to take it to the next level, right?
Yeah,
cut you off, this.
This is a great example. So I'm sure everyone out there has seen those videos where the guy like runs to the other car, and like starts banging on the window, right, while they're recording inside, and, you know, screaming, yelling, acting a fool. And it just, you can't tell me that not everyone that sees that video starts laughing at that guy. Not at the situation, at that person.
Because it's so volatile.
Because not that it's volatile, it looks ridiculous. Yeah. You're not getting your point across.
Yeah. You just look crazy.
You look crazy. Now, take that, put it in your marriage. When you're starting to like get angry like this, and you're having this explosive anger, that's what your spouse sees. Yeah. Sees this ridiculousness of like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Your point's not getting across at all.
Yeah. Or you incite fear. Also not a good thing to have in your marriage.
Like, I don't want you shouldn't be afraid of me.
No.
At all. Like that, my kids should not be afraid of me.
Yeah.
Right? They should have healthy respect for me, but not afraid.
Yeah.
Right? There's a big difference. Like, my kids, this should be the safest place that they feel like they can be is with me.
It's like the way that I think about it, even with you, is like the father relationship is like the kids. It's like, it's not that they know that you can't, it's that you choose not to. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
It's like, yes, you have the authority. Yes, you have the power to dun. But it's that you wield that well.
I feel like a lot of that might have been where I was getting at earlier. And I'm going to talk to men specifically that get anger blow-ups like this. I feel that a lot of them, it is this insecurity of not being able to handle themselves, you know? And I think like Jordan Peterson has said it. There's been multiple people that say it, where it's like you get a guy that can't handle anger, that can't handle these emotions, that you know, always talks this huge game about being able to do these things, or always hacks like this, you know, rough, tough, you know what I'm talking about, right? That in reality, this is probably the guy that can't do anything, that has that insecurity, or doesn't have that capability to handle himself at all. Where you see guys that are very emotionally stable, very confident in what they do, very, you know, calm, like they've had experiences, they're able to talk through things, they're able to speak, you know, they're able to share their emotions. Those are the guys that they've probably been through a lot. They're capable of doing a lot of things. They're capable of things, you know, they're able to do those things, so they understand, I don't need to do those things.
I don't have to prove it to you.
I don't have to prove this to you. I don't have to prove to you that I'm right. Yeah. By screaming and yelling at you. Yeah. I shouldn't be wanting to prove to you that I'm right, other than, hey, I want to talk about this. Yeah. Why do you feel this way? And this is why I feel this way. Right. And we might
trying to understand each other's perspective.
And we might walk away still not feeling, you know, like we both might still be feeling like we're right. Yeah. Right. Well, we're right. I'm right in this situation. Well, so are you. You're right too. And that might just be the thing. Mm-hmm. But that's okay. You've talked about it. You understand where you're coming from, your different perspectives, and then you move on from there. You're not going to have a healthy marriage unless you could do this. Mm-hmm. You know, and shutting down, you know, explosive anger, whatever it may be, like both of those are unhealthy ways to communicate. They show the avoidance of healthy communication. Mm-hmm. They show the avoidance of wanting your marriage to grow. right? It's like that guy that wants to lose 10 pounds, but still eats all the Twinkies. Like, yeah, you want something.
You can want something all you want,
but you're not doing it,
Yeah.
right? So you want this amazing marriage, this marriage that you might see at church from other couples. Like these, you always look for something outside,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, wow, they seem to have a great marriage. They seem to do this. You want all these things. And maybe you go to them and talk to them. Maybe you get guidance. Maybe you have mentors. That's great. But then you get home and you're still eating all the Twinkies. Like, you're not going to get the marriage that you desire,
Yep. I think that is the challenge really for this week, is that you guys have to look at these aspects of your communication, or, what happens when you're upset and your tendency, and you have to figure out, like, am I controlling the emotional thermometer of this home? And if it's your spouse that is doing these things and their response is withdrawing or explosive anger, you guys do need help. Like, you need help. And I would encourage you, like, if your spouse won't go to counseling, you go. If your spouse won't go to coaching, you go, right? Like, get some tools to equip you to navigate those situations in a way that actually is respectful to yourself and even honorable to your marriage, right? Because honorable in your marriage doesn't mean that you just ignore every bad thing, right? Like, it doesn't mean that you just decide not to, address stuff with your spouse that needs to be changed. So you need to make sure you pay attention to it. And you guys, ultimately, to get where you want to go, you're going to have to do some things that you don't normally do. Yeah. And that's what you need to make sure you're paying attention to. So, all right, we'll see you guys next week.